The Sun is at home in Leo from 20 to 30 degrees, and there it can rule with confidence and authority. But in its own sign dignity, the Sun can also become self-absorbed and a bit static. There is a strong sense of responsibility, and the leadership is very stable. And the Sun really enjoys owning power and authority, being in charge, being in the limelight. But it can also become complacent, and it might not always be inspired to initiate new things. And so even though there's a strong leadership and confidence in one's creative expression when the Sun is in its own sign, there can be a tendency towards more of an relaxed, ego-driven type leadership than that of an action-oriented leadership. It is in the first 20 degrees of Leo that the Sun is a true leader and not just a ruler, right? In its Mula Trikona dignity, that's when the Sun has full control over its energy and it wants to take charge and actively inspire others, right? The Sun here has a strong desire to make an impact in the world through its direction and vision, and simply kicking back and taking pride in one's status and achievement isn't good enough. And so the Mula Trikona sign of Leo is where the Sun rather prefers to operate as a motivational force and is not content with just being like a dominant figure. It's in Aries where the Sun's execution is fully optimized, right? Not only has the Sun the raw energy to channel its power into action, but in Aries, which is the battlefield, the Sun gets the perfect environment where it can rise to become its best version, right? The Sun in Aries is not about waiting for some good news to come, nor is it content with sitting behind a desk and telling everyone what to do. It needs to compete and establish its superiority. And this is what it can do in Aries the best, right? In Aries, the Sun is taking charge with dignity and courage and is fighting battles. And the more battles it wins, it starts to climb higher and higher until it reaches the top of what it has come to achieve. And then those achievements, they naturally demand the highest respect and recognition. The Moon in Cancer is in its own sign and provides strong emotional intelligence and a nurturing nature. It feels safe and is able to form healthy emotional connections. The Moon, of course, also rules home and inner foundation, and in Cancer it has that healthy inner world that can create strong emotional bonds. However, the Moon is the most changeable planet, right? It's waxing and waning, and it's moving every 2.5 days into a new sign. And so this constant change makes even the Moon in Cancer person more reactive and unpredictable, right? They experience emotional highs and lows and can be deeply intuitive one moment while overwhelmed the next. And so it is really Cancer that makes the Moon profoundly emotional and sensitive, right? It is also a cardinal sign, and so it can react quickly and take action based on feelings. And that's why in Cancer, the Moon's emotions, they can come quickly and intensely. And the Moon might instinctively react before processing the emotions in a more rational way, okay? Especially, of course, in personal situations, the Moon might feel a lot more deeply involved. Right? Cancer is the sign of home, safety, and protection. And so the Moon is deeply concerned with protecting loved ones. Right? People with a Cancer Moon have a strong desire to protect loved ones, right? They're very attached to them. They are very emotionally involved and feel like that they are also responsible, how everyone feels. And so the moon in Cancer is really highly sensitive, and that's also what causes the moon to struggle to maintain its emotional stability when it gets really tense. And it is for this emotional volatility of the Cancer moon that the moon's Mula Trikona sign is in Taurus and not in Cancer. Right? For all the other planets, the Mula Trikona sign is always in their own sign. Right? Usually only the own sign can provide that raw and pure form of energy. But this is not the case for the moon. The moon is able to have the greatest control and stability in Taurus. This is where it can channel its deepest emotions in a steady way rather than being overwhelmed by them. In Taurus, from 3 to 30 degrees, the moon is in Mula Trikona dignity. Taurus is an earth sign and is known for its grounded and stable nature. And here the moon can be reliable. It can be emotionally consistent. Right? The person becomes patient and can provide a superior sense of security. Right? Even in difficult situations, the person can remain steady in providing positive, encouraging emotions, and it can maintain the nurturing support at all times. Now, the moon in Cancer can be incredibly nurturing, but the emotional state can just fluctuate more. And so that also means that the care can fluctuate for others as well. And the moon in Taurus is just built differently because it is less reactive and unpredictable. The sign of Taurus gives the moon consistency, and therefore the energy of the moon that allows for the highest expression of emotional control is found in the Mula Trikona sign of Taurus. But then there's the moon in exaltation in the first 3 degrees of Taurus. And there the moon shines like no other in terms of how it can nurture and create long-term security. Now the moon in exaltation also needs Taurus, right, the fixed earth sign, to maximize its performance. Right? This, Taurus is security driven. And that is exactly what allows the moon to reach the highest form of stability that provides for this unshakable emotional foundation. And so there's really no other than the moon in Taurus that can create a stable and nurturing home environment. And moon in Taurus people are really the most capable in ensuring the strongest and healthiest emotional ties. Right? They are extremely emotionally reliable, and they can express feelings constructively and harmoniously. In its own sign in Aries, from 12 to 30 degrees, Mars thrives in an environment where bold and direct action is required, and also where he can make decisions quickly and forcefully. Right? When Mars is in Aries, he doesn't dwell on emotions, or he doesn't need to overanalyze. He simply acts and trusts his instincts to lead him in the right direction. This is a Mars that gives a very high energy level, and the person is always looking for a new challenge and a new battle to win. And Mars here in its own sign has autonomy and control over his energy, but the actions are more about immediate results than really sticking with something long-term. But this Mars here in Aries in its own sign is a great placement that gives a strong warrior energy, and the person is really ready to charge forward without fear, without doubt, ready to conquer anything that comes in his way. But the lack of discipline really prevents the person from achieving the best results possible. In Scorpio, Mars expresses its energy in a more controlled way. Right? In Aries, the energy is outwardly directed, but in Scorpio, it is more internalized. Mars in Scorpio doesn't rush into battles. It prefers to wait and observe and then strike when the moment is right. And so Mars in Scorpio strength really comes from a certain emotional depth and also resilience. And that's really what gives them a high ability to deal with crises. Mars here is not afraid of transformation, right? And this is what makes him also a great asset in situations that requires a lot of inner depth and really, toughness, right? To be able to hang in there when situations get really difficult. Now, Mars in Scorpio is in its own sign, and so the energy is a bit relaxed. And this means here particularly that this position can also lead to secrecy, because it is a very internal energy. It can also lead to possessiveness as well, and a tendency to hold on to grudges. In its Mulla Trikona portion of Aries, Mars has raw power and a superior confidence, right? This is really where he is completely independent and can act without hesitation and fully embrace his inner warrior. And so when he strikes, there's really no room for second guessing, because he is fully connected to its own energy. And that's why he becomes completely fearless and determined to win. And Mars here has really this razor-sharp focus where nothing can distract him from its conquest, right? Mars in its own sign, right? So he is more flexible there and adaptable, but this is not going to happen in its Mulla Trikona dignity. This is where he has this unshakable belief in his success, and he is completely convinced of his power to overcome any challenge. Mars in Capricorn reaches the pinnacle of his effectiveness, not through brute force alone, but through strategy and endurance. And this is very different to Mars in its own sign, where Mars is more independent, more impulsive, and might not necessarily stick to something for a long time. Capricorn is what gives Mars a structure and a long-term vision that really turns Mars into this unstoppable force, right? A Mars in Capricorn person can understand that raw power alone is not enough to achieve true success. One must also have patience, one must have a solid plan in place and work within a system. And that's why Mars in Capricorn really thrives under rules and under a hierarchy. And even though he might lose thereby some of his autonomy, he actually gains something much greater. And that is the discipline required to produce results that last far beyond the immediate moment.